Hello everyone, welcome back to Luis Discusses Everything. In today's video, we're going to discuss my updated 2024 presidential election prediction. This is as of March 2024. Now, the last time we looked at this, I think it was about a month ago, gave you my prediction as to who was going to win the presidential election as of the time of that recording. Now, during that recording in particular, I said that Donald Trump was more likely than not to win re-election to the presidency. Now, I would say not that much has changed in terms of the outlook. Spoiler alert, I still think that Trump is going to win the presidential election, but there's been some wild cards thrown into the mix. For instance, in recent polling, there's been the inclusion of likely voters instead of registered voters. So in the aggregate of polls, yes, it shows Trump up in most of the polls that, and by most of the polls, I mean most of the polls that figure swing states. Trump is up on all of them, I would say. I'm showing you right now the average of the polls, right? Here's one of them. So one of the swing states, I would say Georgia, he's up by 6. Michigan, 2.5%. Nevada, 6%. Pennsylvania, 4. North Carolina, 5. Wisconsin, 3.5%. So yeah, in the aggregate of Arizona, 4.5%. So Biden is actually not up on any of the aggregate of polls. Of course, if you click on the aggregate of polls, let's look at Pennsylvania, for example. This is 270 to win. They don't exclude any poll, right? So this includes polls from head-to-head matchup, not including any of the third-party candidates. And it also includes third-party candidates and independents, and it doesn't take into consideration, obviously, the quality of the poll or whatnot, right? So those are two things to take into consideration. Now, the things that they have changed is that now we are starting to see more of a confluence of polls that are polling people who are likely to vote as opposed to people who are registered to vote, right? Like, I'm registered to vote, but does that mean I'm actually going to go to the polls and vote, right? Pollsters don't know that yet. That's why they make the difference between likely and registered. There's been a sizable improvement, right, in some of the more recent polls. I would say, if I'm not mistaken, there's been some recent polls in some states, like, for example, March 7, Minnesota shows up Biden up by a sizable amount. And Minnesota used to be a target for the Trump campaign. Iowa has also had a recent one, but the other ones still reflect February numbers, so we're still trying to look at newer numbers. The ones that receive more accurate numbers have been the national polls, which, yes, of course, this is not this political system is based on the Electoral College, not necessarily the popular vote. But let's look at the popular vote, because if you're a Democrat, you're going to need to win the popular vote by a sizable amount. And we got a fair amount of polls that were taken around the time of the State of the Union address. And in those polls, you can see that the Biden camp is doing much better in terms of, like, narrowing the margin, right? Trump is up on the national level by 0.8%. But if historical trends are any guide, you would have to say that the Democrat needs to win by more than, but by at least 2% on the popular vote in order for them to win the Electoral College. That being said, let's go to the presidential interactive map, because I wanted to give you that baseline set of events that have occurred up until today, right? Now, this is the most up-to-date Electoral College map prediction consensus. That's a mouthful, but essentially this is what all pundits think. Now, this was as of 5 p.m., 12 p.m. Eastern, March 6th, so one day before the State of the Union. And after the State of the Union, a lot of vibes changed, but we'll talk about that in a different video. I'm going to give you my updated prediction. So I do think Trump takes Georgia because it was such a narrow margin that it's basically impossible enough for him to take it. I mean, it's not impossible, but basically it is. I would say he also takes Arizona and Nevada. There's been a rightward shift in all of those states, and I believe with the gross unpopularity of Biden due to his policies in the Middle East, specifically Gaza, I think that's enough to shift these three states. I would say in the case in Pennsylvania, Biden carries it by very, very narrowest of amounts. I still think that Biden carries that state. There's quite a bit of support for him, especially in the Philly area. I could see him carrying Michigan because Michigan, yes, it did have a narrow winning margin for Biden, but it was still 3%. Yes, there's a protest vote, but in the aggregate of polls, you can still see him winning in this state. Where I do see him losing is in Wisconsin, because it was very, very narrow, much narrower than these two other states, and there's more of a willingness to vote for a Trump figure in that state. So I do see this election going in a very narrow direction, with Trump winning 278 Electoral College votes to Biden's 260. We know the presumptive nominees. We know it's going to be Trump versus Biden. I predicted this all the way back 1 year ago, and I said, who are going to be the candidates? These two. So thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, share this video with your friends, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye-bye.